And one of the stories that's emerged is the reason that the shower heads are so low in Cotton is that the university no longer wants students to be able to do that. And then another story is that a number of the stories suggest that the suicide occurred by somebody jumping off one of the balconies, and there are in fact two balconies, at least one on the third floor. So there's a kind of visual effect or an actual part of the architecture of the building that would fit into that story. Although according to people connected with the supervision of the buildings and on the security forces, that there's no record of anyone having died in a fall or in a suicide attempt or anything else.
Joiner actually sinks a half an inch every year. If you walk underneath it, you won't graduate on time.
It's one of those oddly shaped campus buildings that I guess naturally invites stories because nobody could otherwise figure out what the architecture is all about. So if you look at the projecting panels here, that there might be attacks on the building. So then somebody would have to fire directly through the windows, couldn't fire in from the sides. So that's an explanation in the folk tradition, at least, for why the construction is this way.
So that's kind of the theory, that you couldn't actually take over this building because of that. You couldn't actually shoot anybody from inside of the building unless they were straight in front of you.
But if you look up here, there's a steel mesh fence, and these could be lowered. So you can see the track actually where that would happen. And so they used to lower those. They could lower those fences, and these were not here. So the gates were actually added later. So the original building did have a way of sealing off the quad. And this is the only building on campus that has multiple components to it that can be actually sealed, and you can have people walking around in the middle. As far as I know, I can't think of any other place that's designed the same way. And it was, again, so allegedly it was built in this way in order to make it possible to resist any attack from the outside, according to the legends. I gave a talk on campus to an audience of people, faculty from other universities, on folklore and campus lore in particular, and everybody had a story about a building like this one on their own campus. So the stories got started a long time ago, and people still hear the stories even though the circumstances of campus life are quite different now. And the actual rationale for the stories wouldn't make much sense in the 21st century, but the stories have hung around for at least probably 40 or 50 years.
Supposedly, if you walk underneath it, you won't graduate on time. So what a lot of students will actually do is actually walk completely around it, or even grab friends and strangers so that they won't actually walk underneath it, ensuring that they will graduate on time, meaning in about 4 years. So I actually have had several students tell me that they accidentally walked under it during freshman year or sophomore year before they knew, and they aren't graduating on time. So it's a very strong belief in this legend on campus. There's a lot of different ones where might be like a lucky statue or something like that on campus, where you might have to go by and touch the statue or rub its nose or something like that, that actually helps you out with luck on tests or those kind of various things. There's also a couple of schools that have a legend that, this one's a little bad, that supposedly if a girl graduates who is a virgin, the statue will actually tip its hat. If you walk underneath it, you won't graduate on time. Supposedly, if you walk underneath it, you won't graduate on time. So what a lot of students will actually do is actually walk completely around it, or even grab friends and strangers so that they won't actually walk underneath it, ensuring that they will graduate on time, meaning in about 4 years. So I actually have had several students tell me that they accidentally walked under it during freshman year or sophomore year before they knew, and they aren't graduating on time. So it's a very strong belief in this legend on campus. There's a lot of different ones where there's might be like a lucky statue or something like that on campus, where you might have to go by and touch the statue or rub its nose or something like that. That actually helps you out with luck on tests or those kind of various things. There's also a couple of schools that have a legend that, this one's a little bad, that supposedly if a girl graduates who is a virgin, the statue will actually tip its hat. There's a very common legend about Joyner is that when it was actually designed and built, the architect didn't take into consideration the weight of the books. So that Joyner actually sinks a half an inch every year. That's actually not true. There, of course, would take into consideration the weight of the books when building a library, and this is actually a really common story on every college campus I've ever been to, and pretty much everyone I've ever heard about. So almost every college campus in the world actually has this story associated with it. I think people really like the idea that maybe someone smarter than them screwed up. I think it makes them feel a little bit better about the college experience and maybe not doing so. The stories about the clock tower are usually about what it actually does at certain hours, particularly at midnight. So if you look over at the clock tower, you'll see the little door on it, and different things come out of that door at different times of day. In particular, the one that people talk a lot about is the one that comes out at midnight. And what comes out is actually, it's supposed to be a jester or a clown that comes out and says that tempus fugit, which just means time flies, as a sort of reminder to students to enjoy their time in university because it is very fleeting. A lot of people find that very creepy, probably because it's associated with a clown. But there are a lot of rumors about when it appears. Some people say it only shows up on Halloween, and some people say that something different actually shows up on Halloween. So it's really not that hard to prove or disprove this one. I think a lot of people just don't take the time to actually go and do it. So they just talk about it like they have done it, but they actually haven't, so they're really not sure. I don't know if it's just the time of the day that makes it more difficult. Something does happen at noon. We don't have any stories about that one, so maybe it's because it's midnight, which is already sort of perceived as being an hour where evil can happen. The creepiness of clowns is very much a part of folklore. You hear so many stories about why clowns are creepy, and there are a lot of other associated legends that involve clowns, including one with a babysitter that finds a clown in a room and finds this clown sort of disturbing and then calls the parents and says, everything's going well with both babysitting tonight, but this clown that's in this room is really freaking me out. And the parents tell her to get the kids and get out of the house because they actually, in fact, have no clown statue. It's actually, usually it's someone that's coming in to kill them, or it's a homeless person or something like that has broken into the house dressed up like a clown and is pretending to be a statue. So we have a lot of other kind of legends associated with clowns, and there's a lot of other precedents for it. We can see it in literature, we can see it in film. Clowns are just creepy. That whole idea of someone hiding their identity really bothers us.